Hello! In today's video, we're going to be working on a solo high G ukulele arrangement of Danny Boy. Now, this lesson is perfect for anybody who's looking to up their fingerstyle game by going up and down the fretboard utilizing the campanella technique. If you've never heard of campanella before, I've got a video right up here, but the gist of it is mapping the melody over all of your strings so that you can allow each string to sort of ring into each other to create an amazing amount of depth within your arrangement. Let's go ahead and dive into this. I'm going to bring the camera down. If you'd like to download a tab, there's a link here, more on that later. But the first few lines should sound something like this. Now to dive in playing with this, I'm using fingerstyle technique. You can use 3-finger picking or 4-finger picking. There's a link right up here to these techniques if you haven't worked on them before, but just use whatever's most comfortable. And let's go ahead and start with this first pickup bar. We're going to start by playing our open E string, and then 1 on the E. I like to use my index finger here on my fretting hand, then the open on the G. And that's our first little campanella moment. The 0 to the 1 obviously doesn't ring into each other, but getting that 1 to ring into the 0 creates that nice little continued resonance. We're going to follow this up with our first bar. We're going to play this F chord. We're going to play 0 on the C, 1 on the E, and 0 on the A, and pluck those 3 together. Then we're going to play open on the G. Then we're going to go to this F7. Now it's not the full chord, but what we're going to do is take our index finger, place it here on the 3rd fret of the C string, our ring finger here on the 5th fret of the E string, and pluck those 2 together. Then we're going to play 5 on the A string with our pinky finger. Now, try to hold these 2 fingers when you play that 5 if you can. And then after you've played that, we now need to play the 5 on the G. I like to move my middle finger over here to this 5th fret of the G string. Now, there's a lot of fingers at play here. It's okay if a finger comes off, but what you want to make sure is whatever the previous note is that played, you want to try to maintain contact with. In that case, the 5 on the A, we want to hold down as we play the 5 on the G so that we can get, again, that campanella effect of the notes ringing into each other. Then we're going to play open on the A string by taking the pinky off. Then we're going to move down to this B flat by just playing the 2nd fret of the C string here with our middle finger. We're going to pluck our G and C strings together. We're going to play 1 on the E with the index, and then the 2 on the C should still be there with the middle finger. Then we're going to pluck 1 on the E, and then open on the A. Then we're going to move our ring finger up here to the 3rd fret if we want, or what I like to do is move my middle finger, even though it's a bit of a stretch, to that 3rd fret of the G string to kind of set up what comes next. And more on that in a moment, but that middle finger is the best one to use, even though it's a bit of a stretch. It's okay if this index comes off to play that last note. And so these 2 measures with the pickup bar should sound something like this. Kind of neat, right? Just a quick note on the chords. You might notice, Matt, you said a B flat chord, an F7 chord, but these aren't the full chords. And that is correct. When we're doing an arrangement like this, we have to kind of pick some harmony notes to go with our melody notes. The main reason for these chords on the tab, like you see here on screen now, is just so that if you're playing with another musician, you can tell them to play those chords while you're finger picking this part, and it's going to work together seamlessly. But let's go ahead and go on now to measures 3, 4, and 5. We're going to start with an F chord, a little bit different than you might normally play it. Index finger here on the 1st fret of the E string, ring finger here on the 3rd fret of the A string. I'm going to pluck those 3 strings together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ring finger, I'm going to slide it up to the 5th fret on the A string, play that. And then I'm going to take my middle finger and play it here on the 5th fret of the G string. And that's going to give us another one of those nice little campanella moments. Followed by open on the A, taking the ring finger off. And then 1 on the E, sliding the index finger to the 1st fret there on the E string, play that. Then open on the A. That measure is one of my favorite examples of using some of this campanella technique. And so that you can hear it, here's what measures 3, 4, and 5 sound like all together with that. just want to give a quick preview of how to play 3 so that as you're listening through it, you can see that those finger movements create this really nice opportunity for continued resonance. But measure 3 we just talked about. Going into the 4th measure here, we're going to play a C chord by just plucking our G and C strings open. Then we're going to pluck open on the E string, 1 on the E, 0 on the G. Now that 1 on the E is still there, we're going to pluck that for our F chord, just 0 on the C, 1 on the E, and 0 on the A. And this point should look very familiar because measure 5 is actually exactly the same as what we played on measure 1. That opening F chord, open on the G, then that 3 on the C and the 5 on the E with our index and ring fingers, the 5 on the pinky on the A, the 5 with the middle on the G, and then the open A. See, it's exactly the same. So these measures 3, 4, and 5 should sound something like this when played together. Now we go on to the next set of 3 measures, and they're going to sound something like this. So to play these measures, 6, 7, and 8, we're going to start with that same little B flat line that we played there on measure 2, just the middle finger here on the 2nd fret of the C string, pluck that with the open G, then the 1 on the E with the index, and the 2 on the C with the middle finger still there. Then this time, we're going to play 0 on the E string, just take that finger off, and then 1 on the E string, placing that finger back on, and then open on the G. Then we're going to go to the F chord, which is already there, index finger on the 1st fret of the E string, pluck your C, E, and A together. Then move that index to 1 on the A string, and then play all open on the C, E, and A strings together. Then open on the G, 1 on the E with the index finger again, open on the G. Then going into the 8th measure, pluck the C and the E strings together. Before we move on to this next section where we're going to play 8 on the E. Now here's the trick. See this index finger here? I'm going to slide it all the way up to the 8th fret on the E string. So it just maintains contact with the string, slides up. I'm going to pluck that. Now with the plucking here, with these 3 notes, it is okay to use your thumb if you want. It can give a really nice articulate sound. Alternatively, you can finger pick with whatever fingers you're comfortable with using the 3 or 4 finger picking style. But we're going to play the 8 with the index and then the 10 with the ring finger here. And then the 7 with the index on the A string. And that finishes that line. So 6, 7, and 8 should sound something like this, going through. Now as we go on to measure 9, 9, 10, and 11 are going to look and sound something like this. This is really where we're using that campanella technique, moving up the fretboard like I mentioned at the start of the video. To start here on measure 9, we're going to play this D minor. Now, if you remember, we moved that ring finger up to 10 on the E string before, right? We were holding that there. Well, we're going to keep that there, add the middle finger here on 9 of the C, and the index here to 8 of the A string. So we have 0, 9, 8, or excuse me, 0, 9, 10, 8. And we're going to pluck our C, E, and A together here for this really nice D minor chord. And then we're going to move to 7 on the A. Now here's the kicker here. We want to take this off because we need to set up where we're going. We're going to play the 7 on the A string with our ring finger. I know that seems very inefficient, and it kind of is, but the reason is the next thing we play here is going to be this little B flat chord of 5, 5, 6, 7. And we need the ring finger here on the 7th fret of the A string with the index finger barred across the 5th fret of all 4 strings and the middle finger here on fret 6 of the E string. And this is one of the harder parts of the tune because this is a lot of movement, but the reason we do this is we're going to pluck our C, E, and A, which is 5, 6, and 7, nice intense sound. Then we're going to take the ring finger off, hence the bar needed all the way across for the 5 on the A. And then we're going to play the 5 on the G, and then the 5 on the A again. See why we need this bar in place at this time. As we go into the 10th measure here, we're going to pluck our G and our C strings together, which are both there at 5. And then we're going to play 5 on the E by just taking away that middle finger, still leaving the bar where it is, pluck the 5 on the E, and then the 5 on the C. Isn't that neat? Right? So when you look at about halfway through measure 9 into halfway through measure 10, that's our all across the 5th fret using, again, that campanella style and technique. But from here, halfway through 10, we go back and we play the 8 with the index on the E string and the 10 with the ring finger, then the 7 with the index, and then we go back to that D minor, watch index just slides back up to 8, ring finger's already there on 10, middle finger comes over to 9 on the C, pluck those 3 together. And then we go back to the 7 on the A, same deal, we got to use our ring finger here, because we're setting up that same chord as we did before. Bar across the 5th fret, add 6 here on the E string, pluck our C, E, and A together, and then take the ring finger off playing 5 on the A string, then 5 on the G string right here, before finally playing open on the A. At this point, we can just take it off. We can take our hand off completely, or you can just kind of raise the pressure off to get that open string. Doesn't matter too much. But that ends that massive little section. It sounds something like this. Measures 9, 10, 11, moving way up the fretboard. Should be something like... Now you see, I had a little delay there. Why is that? Well, I wanted to do this. But if I do that, oh no, I'm not set up for that chord. So remember, we got to get that ring finger on that 7 of the A to set up the next chord. So let me try that again. It should sound something like this. And now as we go into the next 3 measures, they're going to sound something like this. So we're going up even higher this time. Previously our high was fret 10, now we're going up to fret 12. We're going to start though with the open G and open C together. We're going to play 8 on the E 3 times with our index finger here on our fretting hand. And the reason we're going to play it with our index here is because then we're going to play this next chord, 9 on the C string with the middle finger, and 12 on the A string with the pinky finger. Pluck the C, E, and A at 9, 8, and 12. And then play 10 on the A string. But when we do this 10, it can be tempting to try to do something like this, right? Same deal as before. We actually have to move everything to set up the next chord. In this case, the setup is relatively simple. It's not necessarily easy, but it's simple. Just bar across 10. I say it's simple because it's just this one finger here, but I say it's not necessarily easy because it can be very difficult to get a good tone on 10. So a couple notes here. One is make sure that when you're barring across 10, you're digging right into that fret wire without coming over it. And it's okay for the middle finger to kind of come over the top just to add a little bit extra oomph to get that good connection. And we're going to pluck our C, E, and A together here. And we're going to play the 10 on the G, and the 10 on the E, and the 10 on the G again. So you see, that's why we're setting that up. We're doing that 9, 8, 12, and then we move to the 10, pluck that before the 3 together. And then going into the 14th measure here, we're going to be playing 0 on the C and 8 on the E. I like to use my index finger here for that. And the reason I like to use my index finger here is because where we're going next, we're going to be sliding down to the 1st fret on the E string, adding the middle finger here on the 2nd fret of the C. Right, so we have it go with that open A kind of in between. See, I'm just sliding that index down. And then to finish this, I'm going to play open on the E, and then 1 on the E again, and then open on the G. Another beast of a few measures here. Should sound something like this. Measures 12, 13, and 14. Going into the last two measures of the song, it should sound something like this. And compared to all the other parts of the song, pretty easy. We're going to start by just playing this first fret on the E string with our F chord. We're going to take the pinky, play 5 on the A. Then we're going to play 3 on the A with the ring finger while plucking the C, E, and A together. Then we're going to do a pull-off. Now, pull-offs I absolutely love because it can give you a kind of almost like a campanella-like effect, but on one string, because you're kind of getting this really nice sound, and it allows you to use the campanella afterwards. I think that just blends so well. The trick, though, to doing a pull-off there is we want to actually physically pluck the string, and that's the hard part. Let me super zoom in to show you this. So I'm here at the 3rd fret on the A string. What you'll notice is I'm actually going to not just take my hand off, I'm going to pluck the string with the pad of my finger. So I'm going to practice adding tension there, see how the string bends a little bit, and then pulling it off. So when I play that measure, that creates that sound. Bring the camera back out a bit. So after I do that pull off to open, I play open on the G, 1 on the E with the index finger here, and then going into the 16th measure, the final measure, I'm going to play 2 on the C with the middle finger. Then I'm going to play open on the C and the E strings together. And I'm just going to re-add this index finger here to the 1st fret of the E string and pluck that along with the C to finish it. And that means these last 2 bars should sound something like this when played. And that wraps up this beautiful, beautiful tune. I'm going to bring the camera back up to me. If you'd like to download the full tab of this, please check out my Patreon page. We actually do a vote every month based on suggestions of my patrons, and then they vote on these suggestions to figure out what the lesson's going to be for the month. And this one happened to win this month, and it's not just this one. We also have a low G version as well as a baritone version that's incoming. So be sure to check the link down below to stay tuned. It's even free to sign up for Patreon, and you can see all of the different tutorial videos and everything else on there. And it's thanks to the support of patrons that I'm able to make these tutorials. So please consider checking it out if you'd enjoy this. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. Give this video a like, a subscribe. It really helps a lot. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time on the next tutorial here. Thanks so much. Take it easy.